Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for your patience to attend this conference. And now we are in the third sessions for the keynote speaker from Malaysia. In this case, the Associate Professor Dr. Mohd Mahzan Awang from the National University of Malaysia, UKM, Universiti Kebangsaan, Malaysia. And I'd like to welcome to the Professor, Associate Professor Dr. Mohd Mahzan Awang, and also the attendees or the participants in this conference. And before letting the Associate Professor Dr. Mohd Mahzan Awang to present, to give us his presentation, let me tell you a brief information about him. He is an associate professor at Center of Educational Diversity Research Faculty of Education, UKM. And about his education, he obtained his PhD degree in education from the University of Dundee, Scotland, United Kingdom in 2012. And for his master's degree in sociology and of education in 2005, he got it from UKM. And his first degree in specializing in socio-cultural studies, he got from Academy of Malaysia, Malay Study, University of Malaysia, University of Malaya in 1999. And in addition, he also got his teaching certificate from IFO Teacher Training College in 1994. As additional information, he also has been invited as a keynote speaker in several international conferences and events, such as the second International Conference on Social Science and Humanities in 2019, and some other conferences and events. As the academics is also active in writing some articles as a journal and proceedings, and also he is active as a reviewer, assessor, as well as external examiner. And without further ado, let's have a look and listen to the presentation given by the Associate Professor Dr. Mohd Mahzan Awang. The time is for Associate Professor Dr. Mohd Mahzan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Lalu Sumardi. We have traveled to several countries this morning. Just now, we listened to the professor from United States of America, and then the early morning, we listened to the professor from Australia, and then now, all of you are with me, Malaysia, where it's very popular with Upin and Ipin. So very good morning, everyone. I'm supposed to go to Indonesia, but unfortunately, during the COVID pandemic, it is very difficult for me to go there because there are several procedures need to follow. So now I need to apologize because I need to find a good place to get a very good signal, because now I'm using a mobile phone to deliver my keynote speech. So for the few more minutes, I might be moving from somewhere, but the session, my keynote session will be going on. So I'm sorry for that until I get a very good signal, and then I will stay there. But my presentation today is regarding the education for rural society and marginalized community, and focusing more on data from my research, especially in Malaysia. Before I'm starting my presentation, I just want to let you know that when I travel to Indonesia, I see lots of varieties in rural communities compared to Malaysia, because Indonesia has a lot of uniqueness in terms of population as well. Indonesia, I think, got around 300 million people, whereas in Malaysia, we just have around 28 million people only. You can just imagine how rich of Indonesia compared to Malaysia in terms of population. You've got so many ethnicities in Indonesia, but in Malaysia, usually we are having four major ethnics. One, Malay; second, Chinese; third, Indians; and fourth, Bumiputra or Aboriginal people live in Borneo, Sabah, and Sarawak. Okay, we go to the next.
Yeah, sorry for the technical problem. It seems that Dr. Mohd Mahzan has a technical problem with the signal. Hello? Okay, this is also to let you know that if you have any questions to the keynote speaker, so you can write down in the chat box.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, okay, please.
Okay, sorry for the interruption. We got the internet problem, but I think it's now stable now.
Okay, well,
so the problems, the similar problem face many people who are living in rural areas. Infrastructure problems, where difficult to access to that areas, and also there are so many infrastructure problems in terms of economic problem as well, leaderships related problem, administrative problem. So basically, the similar problems shared by the majority of people who live in rural areas, including Malaysia as well. And then we go to the next slide, please. In Malaysian context, you can see that. If you can see there, there are two lands for those who are not familiar with Malaysia. Malaysia has one, Peninsular Malaysia. The second one is Borneo, comprised of two countries, Sabah and Sarawak. So the next to Sabah and Sarawak is Kalimantan. I visited Kalimantan once. It is a lovely place. You can see lots of many natural resources there. So Sabah and Sarawak, the urbanization process is slower than Peninsular Malaysia. At the moment, we can see that more than 60% of land in Sabah and Sarawak in Borneo are populated by rural communities. If compared to Peninsular Malaysia, the urbanization is rapidly growing. You can see there, you visit to Malaysia, you visit Kuala Lumpur, you visit many states in Peninsular Malaysia, you see so many buildings there. So the definition of rural and urban is depending on the populations. Usually more population will be a sign for urbanization. And the big issue in Malaysia is regarding the Aboriginal people who live there and how the education will help them to raise their well-being. As we go to the next, rural community. And the second one is, next slide, please. Okay, marginalized communities. We have rural communities and we have marginalized communities. Communities who are in marginal live in both rural and also in urban areas. If you look at the definition of marginalized communities, it's referring to those who excluded from mainstream social, economic, education, or cultural life. Examples of marginalized populations include the following, but are not limited to group excluded due to race, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, physical ability, language, and immigration status. It's including senior citizen, racial, cultural minorities, military combat veterans, person of below average intelligence, hearing injury and physically challenged persons, persons with serious and persistent mental illness, persons with cognitive impairments. We look at here, there are so many categories for those who are under marginalized communities, elderly, they are also poor urban. If you go to Jakarta or you go to Kuala Lumpur and then you visited many places, you can see that people who are living under the bridge, and people who are suffering from economic problems, people who are suffering from attending school, people are suffering from drugs, trafficking, people who are suffering from many things. So they are marginalized communities. So the question is that how our education can help them to make sure that they are living in a better situations. So it comes to the ideas of education for improving human or social well-being. Next slide, please. So rural education, that when we talk about marginalized community, for rural education is a provision key or a key factor for economic development and for also well-being and cohesiveness of rural communities. The quality and accessibility of rural education have a double role to play in addressing gaps in skills, starting from children's early years. High quality education and care can help raise outcomes in education and labor markets. In view of demographic change and decreasing population figures in rural areas across the world, the financial viability of providing high quality education close to people's place of residence is increasingly but into question as economies of scale falter. The question of how to make schools with more or decreasing student enrollment ready for the future lies at the heart of the policy debates about education provision in rural and remote areas. I know that all of you also visited many places there, and many of us also might be from rural areas, from villages. We know that the situation, there are some students, our friends, that they are having problems to get a very good education. For those who are living in urban areas, they have many supports. They have tuition centers. They have many supports, facility support, social supports and everything. But when we are in rural areas, sometimes some of them are not motivated to go to school because they know that they cannot achieve a good or better result. So at the end, the dropping out issues still existence until now. So the next, please. We go to a global perspective, to UNICEF. And talking about education, we are in Asia, actually, in Southeast Asia, many people talk about academic achievement, academic improvement, academic progress. Actually, the United Nations and the Convention on the Rights of Child relates specifically to education. States parties agrees that child's education shall be directed to developing the child's personality, talent, and mental and physical ability to their fullest potential. So the potential is the core element for education. So the framework here is that the United Nations adopted 4 pillars for students for well-being, namely learning to live together, learning to be, learning to do, and learning to learn. So learn to live together involve communications, conflict resolutions, cultural sensitivity, multilingualism. Or in Indonesia, I read a paper with my friends from Sriwijaya University talk about tepung tawa. That is one of the local, what is called local wisdom in Indonesia. How the local communities solve problems when the problems emerge in rural areas. We have many local wisdom to solve problems. So learn to live together. We share many things. In Indonesia, in Malaysia, in Singapore, in Thailand, we always, let's say, when we having lunch, makan, we got one fish, makan ikan, kan? Duduk satu pinggan, share. But in Western countries, it might be different. They don't know how to share. Ikan satu meja. We go to nasi padang. Go to nasi padang. There are so many dishes there. You can select, and then you can share it. So from the plates, from the table, from the lunch dinner, we share how to live together. And we go to Jakarta, we go to your place. You can see the road, jalan raya, kereta sana pimpong, motor sana sini. There is a limited of accident, and if the accident occurred, we are going to solve the problems nicely. We talk to each other, and then because this is the place where we need to share many things, not only share the dreams, but also share the real life. This is the nice of our culture. And learn to be. Learn to be means to say that we also have our dreams to be someone. So let's say Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore also want to be a developed countries, but in our way. So education, the question is that how our education system lead to that aims or that objective. Malaysia want to be something. Indonesia want to be something. Singapore wants to be something. But in our own culture. And then learning to do, now many education institutions is focusing on skills development. Not only hard skills, but also soft skills, communication skills, negotiation skills, problem solving skills, higher order thinking skills, and so many things. And it involves many activities in schools and many projects in school. And learning how to learn, learning to learn, meaning to say that we need to learn, relearn. So we learn something, so we learn many things. So the 4 pillars introduced by UNICEF actually are adopted by many education systems worldwide. And for rural area also, the same things we can see that in education for rural areas. So go to next. So education, well-being in rural areas. There are so many issues here. So we can see that PISA, result PISA. Findings from OECD PISA study indicate that an increase in the isolation of high achievers from other students is associated with lower test scores among socio-economically disadvantaged students at age 15, while not showing any significant effect of their advantaged peers. Studies from the United States suggest that rural students lag behind urban students mainly due to their lower socioeconomic profile. This is a common problem where academic achievement, pupils from urban areas are better than pupils from rural areas. In European nations, rural areas consistently have the lowest level of tertiary attainment and gaps. So my slide here is talking about the gap between rural and also urban. We can see that looking at the academic achievement, pupils from urban areas are better than to rural areas. Go to the next slide, please. So several issues shaping the well-being education for rural and marginalized community. First one, teaching and learning environment. Teaching and learning environment plays a very, very significant factor. I'm a sociologist. I do believe on environment. Environment shapes human, and the human interaction shape environment. We visited many countries. We can see that how the environment affect our life. Let's say we go to 4 season countries, United Kingdom, European countries, how the 4 seasons affected their life. And snow time, different life. Summer time, different life. Where in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Singapore, in the Philippines, we just have summer all the year. And then it affects our life as well. There is, for your information, I just want to inform you that Malaysia has an early childhood education care as well. Sorry, there is a distraction there. Sorry, so for the instructions. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. We go to the next issues. There are another issues in rural areas also, staffing schools with quality teachers, teachers preparation, learning and support, school leadership, school community relations, communications and technology. There are several issues relating to marginalized community educations. So we go to the next slide, ensuring well-being education for rural students. I have prepared several suggestions. Go to the next slide, please. Number one, we need contextualized policies and research by reflecting the role of place and developing local and school capacity in rural areas. Number one, because we see that now the curriculum is biased to urban areas rather than local area. It's rather than rural areas, because people who live in urban areas, they got many support if compared to people who live in rural areas. And the second one is that preparing and developing teachers and leaders for rural context and building supportive professional working environment in rural schools. The third one is if teacher shortage occurs, implementing multi-grade teaching system, connecting rural schools with other schools and support, making effective use of technology and distance learning for students and education. I know that they are so difficult to make sure that well-being for education for rural students, but something needs to do. So go to the next slide, please. The next slide, that one. Okay, right. You see here, 4 categories of 21st century skills. I'm telling you that everybody needs to know that in the 21st century skills, we need to have people who have a good in thinking and also know how to work and know how to use many skills. But the problem is that how our students in rural areas and marginalized community are able to get this skill to make sure that they can be better or they can have good jobs in the future. And the super smart societies that for Society 5.0, Indonesia adopted Society 5.0. So because I see that in Japan, Society 5.0 is now debating and discussing more than Industrial Revolution 4.0. So integration between technologies and humans are there. Okay, we go. I think that's for me because I'm waiting for your questions. So we need to discuss further on how our education can help our rural and marginalized community are better. And thank you very much, Dr. Lalu.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mohd Mahzan, for the nice presentation and energetic presenter from Dr. Mahzan Awang. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we wait for your questions. If you have questions, you can raise your hand up or write a question in the chat box.
Or I would like to change the style. I might want to ask Dr. Lalu.
Yes, please.
Can you explain a bit for me? We can share the situation of rural communities in Indonesia at the moment, because it also helped me to understand clearly, because for the past 2 years, I have not visited Indonesia, because usually if you got something to share with me before we get questions.
Okay, well, I think it became worse as the pandemic for the condition of the rural society and the marginalized community here. I think that because of the pandemic of COVID-19, so it become worse, I think so.
So the same situation here.
Yeah, same situation. Okay, so everyone, so I can say that the society and also the community condition where they live has a positive and close relationship with the education level. So we can say that it is our responsibility as for the educators and also the state to provide a better education for the student, especially coming from the rural society and marginalized community. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions related to the education for rural society and marginalized community, you can write it down in the chat box. Well, there are some suggestions as what Dr. Mahzan stated about how to answer the well-being education for rural students. And that's related especially to the policies and also research. Okay, let me see the chat book. Okay, this is from Muhammad. Okay. Okay, sorry, I cannot read clearly the person who write the question, but let me read the question. Okay, Pak Dr. Mahzan, what do you think about the implementation of national curriculum? Okay, considering considering the diversity of learning. Wait, I have a problem with. Okay, well, thank you. Yes, this is a question. Okay, what do you think about the implementation of national curriculum, considering the diversity of learning situation, especially in such a big country like Indonesia? So it will be such a comparison from what you have in Malaysia. So please, Dr. Mahzan.
Thank you, Dr. Lalu. I also read 3 questions there. Might be I can cover several things there. A comparison between Malaysian curriculums and Indonesian curriculum. When we talk about curriculum, the misleading conception is that when we talk about curriculum, many of public thinking of the subjects offered. Yes, the academic subjects are the pillar of the curriculums, but the philosophy, the main philosophy of education, actually what education is. Education is something need to do with how to humanize human. Menjadikan, memanusiakan manusia. That is the pillar for education actually. So the curriculum is a standard one that want to make sure that all the people in all the countries got the same directions. Let's say during penjajahan, during our colonialization, there are so many curriculums leading to different countries. In Malaysia, let's say when Chinese came to Malaysia, the initial curriculums were due to China, and from India migrated to Malaysia. The initial curriculum direct to Indian philosophy. So now all the countries are independent. So we design the same curriculums. So all of us share the same inspirations. Okay. The problem is that how to make sure that our curriculums can fulfill the needs of community. And there are 4 students, let's say, students from rural areas. They went to school. They go to school. For what purpose? Are they going to just have a certificate? Or just because of friends? Or they want to use the qualifications from the school to be somebody one day? Or they just want to go to school to get something from that, and then after finish school, they go back to traditional works. So there are so many works need to do. We need to make sure that our curriculum can tackle and understand what actually we need. If you come to Malaysia, you can see so many academic subjects. 14 academic subjects need to learn by primary schools. In Indonesia also, there are so many academic subjects need to learn by rural communities, urban students. We really needed that. The same thing happened to historical content, kandungan isi sejarah, subjek sejarah umpamanya in Indonesia, Malaysia. How to make sure that the historical events are taken and included in the history education curriculum. Berapa persen? Di Indonesia sudah ada sekarang ini. Berapa persen itu dipanggil local history. But we need to go more there. Let's say pupils in Mataram, area-area sini, Sumatera, people in Sulawesi. Apa mereka mahukan umpamanya? People contohnya who live in pulau or who live in coastal areas. What they want actually? They want might be skillful subjects to help them to make sure that they can, when they finish school, they can work in their local communities. But it needs something to do there. That's why I think that the best curriculum is to make sure that we need to integrate the national aspirations and the local community aspirations. How to do that? For sure, we need a political will. Integrate. I do believe that people who live in Indonesia, let's say in Kalimantan, might be different aspiration for their life if compared to those who are living in Jakarta, and for those who are living in Sulawesi, for those who are living in Javanese island. So we make sure that we need to integrate the aspiration of the pupils in combination of the national philosophy. So how to motivate rural students to go to schools? Motivating students is not only a problem in rural areas. In urban areas also, they want to go to shopping mall, they want to play with your friends, they want to move around, they want to ride bikes. So motivating students to schools is not rural community problem. All the problems of this happen when? When this thing happen? When the school is developed. Bila sekolah ada saja, masalah ada dua. Satu yang tak mau pergi ke sekolah. Yang kedua, yang memang duduk di sekolah kerana dia mahu. Di mana-mana negara sekalipun. So itulah problem. But I'm happy that by having this kind of conference, we can exchange ideas. How to motivate students to attend schools nicely. Let's say we go to Australia. Go to Australia and look how the classroom environment there. I live in Scotland for more than 4 years, nearly 4 years. I visited many schools. They are so conducive there. You go there, less stress, less problems. Teachers, numbers of classrooms smaller than if compared to Malaysia. So visited to other countries, it doesn't mean we just go for jalan-jalan, not for tourism. We need to learn and relearn. I also visited Indonesia and learned many things from Indonesia. In Malaysia, until now, difficult to bring handphone to schools. But I visited several schools in Indonesia. Many students can bring phone to the school, handphone to the school because of the sekolah. The schools allowed them to bring for the use to be used as one of the learning gadgets. So this is something that we need to do. So I'm suggesting that studi banding mesti diperkasakan semula. We need to do more studi banding to make sure that we can learn the best practices from other countries as well. Thank you very much, Dr. Lalu.
Okay, well, thank you.
I'm answering the question.
There is other two questions. Is it okay to present the questions? But that's still related to what you have stated just now about the motivation. So, well, this is from the participants just to strengthen the point about motivations. So here from Miftah, Miftah, I think that's boy. Okay, he stated, I came from rural area in NTB state and from rural community. Okay, and then when teachers ask them to go to school, but parents insist them to go to work. Okay. So in one case, teachers ask them to go to school, but in another case, parents ask them to work, to get work. So what do you think about how maximizing, how to maximize the student motivations in order that they insist and motivate to go to school, insist of following the parent's suggestion to get work. Okay, well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lalu. The same thing, the same problems occurs in Malaysia. I just want to share what the Malaysian government is doing. In Malaysia, there are two ministries. One, Ministry of Education. The second one is Ministry of Rural Development. So two ministries are working together to help rural communities. Ministry of Education in Malaysia focuses on formal education, schools, institutions, that is under Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Rural Development are focusing on non-formal and informal education. So for those parents who have problems to get good income or face problems to find good income for their families, there are many projects, there are many programs have been designed by the Ministry of Rural Development. So they help this community to go out from their problems, economic problems. I know that the problems happen. Parents, actually, they want to support their families. They need their children to help them to make sure that they can live better. But how to help them without their children? So needs to do now. I do really believe that these problems must be solved by the pemerintah. The government must have a very clear policy, very strategic action to make sure that they can come out from the poor area. Lalu saya sebut, kalau kerana kerja kuat itu boleh bisa menjadi kaya, karyawan yang membina jalan raya itu sepatutnya menjadi lebih kaya. Bisa tak? Kalau kerana kerja lama itu membuatkan orang lebih kaya, rasanya kita ini lebih kaya daripada orang-orang yang buat kerja kita lama. Itu falsafahnya adalah we need to do something, but in our capacity, I think the government needs to do something to make sure that the communities who face problems, they have economic problems. They don't have a criminal problem. They just have economic. Help them. So support them to go out from their problems. So looking at the Malaysian model, we got so many Felda umpamanya. Pokok kelapa sawit, the government look, you don't know how to read, okay, the government plants you. We plant you a kelapa sawit. We help you to plant a rubber estate. And then we help you how to go out. I think for those who would love to know about this, you can learn more about rural development system, rural development models, how to go out. I know that there are so many countries in the world try many things. Indonesia also have done many things. There are so many things that we can share together. So number one, for those parents who ask their children go to help their work, they are actually want to make sure that they can live better. So help them, support them, don't punish them. Ask them and then try to find solutions and then bring solutions and then suggest to the local authorities to help them. I think supporting them by looking that don't punish children who go to help their parents because they don't want to go to school because they know that they need to help their parents rather than going to school. The priority is there. So that's my my opinion and my answer to that question.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Mahzan. But there are still two questions, but I think one more question here. I'd like to get your opinion. Okay, this is written in Indonesia language, but it seems Malaysia as well, because it is from Pak Salman. Pak Salman, he is in Malaysia as well. Okay, let me read in bahasa. Di Pak Salman mengkritisi tentang tidak adanya kita jumpa, jadi tidak ada kita jumpa spesifikasi yang menyatakan kurikulum ini hanya untuk rural ataupun hanya untuk urban. Jadi kurikulum itu merata tanpa membedakan lokasi di mana pendidikan itu dilaksanakan. So, what do you think about this point, Dr. Mahzan. Thank you.
Ya, saya amat-amat setuju dengan Atta itu. Amat sukar sekali untuk melihat perbezaan, difference between curriculum for rural, curriculum for urban, because we are developing the same curriculums. One size does not fit all actually. Satu kurikulum tidak boleh untuk semua. Kurikulum yang lebih terbuka sepatutnya sudah ada, sebab kalau Malaysia, Indonesia dan negara-negara seperti kita ni, varietiesnya banyak. So the purpose of doing curriculum, go to the local needs, kurang ada. Apa yang kita ada sekarang ni adalah designing co-curriculum to help the communities. That is an alternative. Pak Salman, kalau kita lihat co-curriculum, bisa ada co-curriculum. But the problem with co-curriculum design is that just more focusing on the celebrating cultures. We got silat, we got celebrating cultures rather than providing useful skills. Now it's time to get better for co-curriculum, because curriculum might be difficult to redesign, but co-curriculum is easy. So I'm suggesting that looking at co-curriculum design as well to make sure that contohnya people who living in Sulawesi, apa sebenarnya skills yang mereka mahukan? People yang living in Malaysia, in Sabah and Sarawak, apakah skill yang mereka mahukan untuk tamat saja sekolah, mereka boleh guna skill tersebut to survive. People who live in coastal area, nelayan, cari hasil, tani, ikan dan sebagainya, co-curriculum may help them to make sure that they can survive after their studies for basic situation. Now the pandemic becomes the situation more complicated. The academic achievement are facing big problem now, because where we want to go now, how to get nasi, how to survive, how survival becomes the main priority now. So the last 2 years, 2 tahun yang lalu, pembelajaran dalam talian saya tahu very problematic because difficult to get access. But the studies, the learning, the education must be going on without special. Saya tengok Indonesia mencadangkan kurikulum kecemasan, emergency curriculum, which is very good. Tapi I don't know how the progress now. Curriculum emergency. Kalau kita lihat di negara-negara membangun seperti di Amerika, di Japan dan sebagainya, natural disaster is often occur. Ada hurricane, ada ribut topan, ada macam-macam lagi. Tapi sekolah tetap diteruskan. Bagaimana mereka lakukan? Now, we need to learn. So saya cadangkan supaya Dr. Lalu pergi visit juga ke Japan, melihat bagaimana kurikulum sekiranya berlaku gempa. Bagaimana sekiranya kurikulum itu berlaku ketika ribut tofan ataupun waktu salji tebal. Itu saya cadangkan, studi banding itu kita kena tingkatkan lagi. Itu ya, Dr. Lalu, campur-campur bahasa Malaysia sama bahasa Inggeris Malaysia. Upin dan Ipin.
Yeah, well, thank you for the spoken language to us, not only from Upin but also from Dr. Mahzan here. Well, and there is also one other question, but sorry, because of the time, Bu Sari, I think that your question has been answered, mentioned just now, talking about the curriculum and related to the needs of the students. Well, because of the time, here we are in Mataram. We are going to have Jumat prayer. So it's no.
Dr. Lalu, izinkan saya nak ucap terima kasih kepada Universitas Mataram. Saya di Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia adalah dekan di Fakultas Pendidikan. Jadi saya mengundang ibu-ibu, bapa-bapa nanti pasca pandemik kemari ke Malaysia. InsyaAllah saya ada di Fakultas Pendidikan. Kita bisa ngobrol-ngobrol, minum teh tarik dahulu sebelum kita desain apa-apa program yang saya lakukan. Saya ucap terima kasih banyak Dr. Lalu.
Well, okay, well, we'd like to continue this collaborative teaching or any other information we can have in next agenda. Okay, well, as the final remarks, so I'd like to thank you very much to Associate Professor Dr. Mohd Mahzan for the great presentation and energetic presentation for us. Hopefully that it can enhance our understanding about education, especially related to education for rural society and marginalized community. Let's have a give a big applause to Dr. Associated Dr. Mohd Mahzan Awang. Thank you very much for the presentations, and that's all for the third sessions, and all attendees. We can end the session now, and we'd like to have the next agenda after Jumatan prayer at 2 p.m. Thank you. Okay, thank you everyone and all attendees. Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon for all of us. The distinguished keynote speakers, invited speakers, presenters, and all participants, welcome to the third